Blood splattered across the arena floor as Vrexora's blade found its mark. The crowd roared, their multicolored appendages waving frantically in approval. 79 victories, no defeats. The massive Dracosian fighter stood 8 feet tall, her iridescent scales reflecting the harsh arena lights as she raised her arms to acknowledge the crowd's adulation. The Crimson Reaper claims another victim. The announcer's voice boomed through the galactic coliseum, floating in orbit around Centauri Prime. Is there no one in the 12 systems who can challenge the might of Vrexora? Behind the public spectacle, Vrexora retreated to her holding cell, her 4 eyes blinking in different patterns, a sign of distress in her species. The handlers gave her wide berth. Even the battle-hardened Ursidian guards, renowned for their ferocity, avoided eye contact with the gladiator as she passed. Your performance metrics are improving, stated Overseer Lack, the spindly Arthosian who managed her contracts. The betting pools reached an all-time high. The consortium is pleased. Vrexora said nothing, simply removing her ceremonial armor piece by piece. Each plate was stained with the fluorescent blue blood of her opponent, a warrior from the methane plains of Rigel 6 who had boasted of ending her streak. Like all the others, he had underestimated her desperation, her need to survive. Tomorrow, you face the champion from Earth's colonies, Lack continued, tapping information into his neural tablet. Their first entry into the intergalactic circuit. The humans are sending their best. Humans? Vrexora's voice was unexpectedly melodic for a creature of her size, a haunting contralto that made Lack's antennae twitch. I've never fought one before. Primitive bipeds. Technologically inferior but surprisingly resilient. They've only been spacefaring for 70 years but have already established 6 colony worlds. Aggressive expansionists. Lack paused. They've been studying your fighting techniques, Vrexora snorted, a gesture that sent small flames shooting from her nostrils. Let them study, it won't help them. When Lack departed, Vrexora pressed her scaled palm against the wall panel, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside lay her most treasured possession, a small holographic crystal showing her homeworld, Draco Prime, before the ecological collapse. Green fields, twin red suns setting over crystalline mountains, and her clutch siblings playing by the shores of a Mercury. Lake all gone now, her planet rendered uninhabitable, her species scattered across the stars as refugees, indentured servants or, like her, entertainment for the wealthy elite of the galactic core. She had been captured during a refugee transport raid 5 cycles ago. Given a choice between execution or the arena, she had chosen to fight. Every victory extended her contract. 100 victories would earn her freedom, according to consortium law. 21 more to go. That night, as artificial gravity cycled to its rest phase, Vrexora dreamed of the human she would face. In her nightmare, the creature morphed between forms, sometimes appearing as a hulking beast similar to the Ursidians, other times as a sly, quick predator like the Vulpesians. She had no reference point for these humans, no way to prepare specific combat techniques. It didn't matter. She would adapt, as she always had. The human would fall like all the others, another stepping stone on her path to freedom, another life she would take to reclaim her own. As dawn broke over the artificial horizon of the space station, Vrexora performed her pre-combat ritual, sharpening her natural claws and the edges of her ceremonial blade. The metal sang against the whetstone, a high-pitched keen that matched the hollow feeling in her chest. 79 victories, 0 defeats, 21 more kills to freedom. The human would be number 80. The Colosseum buzzed with unprecedented excitement. Humans were rare visitors to this sector, and the prospect of watching one battle the infamous Crimson Reaper had drawn spectators from 17 systems. Corporate executives from the Orion Arm sat alongside crime lords from the Perseus Spur, united in their bloodlust. From her holding pen, Vrexora observed the crowd through narrow slits in the wall. The amphitheater's design, concentric rings ascending toward a transparent dome that revealed the stars beyond, mimicked ancient gladiatorial structures, but incorporated advanced technologies, gravity modulators, atmospheric barriers that could simulate various planetary conditions, and nano-reinforced viewing shields protecting the audience from stray blood, limbs, or weapon fragments. "Your opponent has arrived," Overseer Lack announced, interrupting her thoughts. "Quite the commotion in the human sector. They've brought a substantial delegation." Vrexora stretched her muscular limbs, her dorsal spines extending to their full, impressive length. "Do they hope to intimidate me with numbers?" "They're a tribal species," Lack explained. "They travel in packs even into deep space. Fascinating evolutionary adaptation for creatures with such fragile physiology." The preparation gong sounded, signaling 10 minutes until combat. Vrexora donned her battle armor, not for protection, as her scales were naturally stronger than most manufactured materials, but for the psychological impact. The crimson plates with obsidian trim had become her trademark, striking fear into opponents before the first blow was struck. "May your blade find vital organs quickly," Lack offered the traditional pre-fight blessing, "and may my enemy's blood nourish the universe." Vrexora completed the ritual response mechanically. The holding pen's door slid open. The roar of the crowd washed over her like a physical force as she stepped into the arena. The announcer's voice rang out, listing her victories, her most memorable kills, the odds favoring her triumph once again. She barely heard the words, focusing instead on the opposite entrance where her human opponent would soon appear. When the doors finally parted, Vrexora blinked all four eyes in confusion. The human was small, much smaller than she had anticipated. Standing perhaps 6 feet tall, the creature appeared almost fragile compared to her massive frame. Its skin was a rich brown, lacking any protective scales or chitin. No visible natural weapons, no claws, no venomous appendages, not even the armored exoskeleton of the Arthosians. Representing Earth and her colonies, the announcer's voice boomed, Commander Pax Morozova, veteran of the Proxima Centauri border, conflict and 3-time champion of Earth's Global Combat League. The human wore minimal armor, just chest and limb protection, leaving joints exposed. A tactical error or supreme confidence? Vrexora couldn't decide. The human, Morozova, carried a single retractable staff that likely concealed additional functions. Standard design for minimalist fighters who relied on speed rather than power. As was tradition, they approached the central circle for the ritual acknowledgement. Closer now, Vrexora could see the details of her opponent's face. The eyes were particularly striking, a deep violet color unusual among bipeds. They displayed no fear, only calm assessment. "I've studied your fights," the human said in flawless, galactic standard. "You're magnificent." The compliment caught Vrexora off guard. Most opponents attempted to intimidate or remained silent. None had ever complimented her technique. "You will die regardless of your preparation," Vrexora responded. Following the expected script, the human smiled, a disconcerting expression that showed blunt teeth. "Perhaps, but what a privilege to face such a warrior." They returned to their starting positions. The consortium's ceremonial countdown began, holographic numerals floating above the arena as the atmospheric conditions adjusted to standard breathable mix for both species. 3, 2, 1, combat. The human moved with unexpected speed, darting forward then veering left, testing Vrexora's reactions. The Dracosian pivoted, her tail sweeping low to catch the human off balance. Morozova leaped over it with graceful precision, the staff extending to full length mid-jump. Their first exchange of blows was tentative, each fighter assessing the other's style. Vrexora noted the human's excellent technique, economical movements, no wasted energy. Despite the size disadvantage, Morozova evaded the worst of Vrexora's attacks, absorbing minor hits while looking for openings. "Your reputation is well deserved," the human called out during a momentary separation. Vrexora narrowed her upper eyes. "Save your breath for fighting." The battle intensified, Vrexora's natural aggression building as the human continued to evade her killing strikes. The crowd's enthusiasm grew with each dramatic exchange. Here was something they hadn't seen before. the Crimson Reaper being matched for speed and skill, if not for raw power. For the first time in many cycles, Vrexora felt genuine uncertainty about the outcome of a fight. 3 hours into the combat, both gladiators showed signs of fatigue. Vrexora had landed several significant blows, leaving the human's armor dented and cracked in multiple places. But Commander Morozova had proven remarkably resilient, exploiting gaps in Vrexora's defense to inflict precise strikes of her own. The crowd had never seen the Crimson Reaper bleed in combat. Now, greenish fluid trickled from a gash above her secondary eye ridge where the human's staff had connected with surprising force. Extraordinary. The announcer's voice echoed through the arena. The longest anyone has survived against the Dracosian champion. The betting algorithms are recalibrating by the second. Vrexora circled her opponent, grudging respect building. Within her, the human fought with intelligence, adapting to her style, preserving energy when possible. There was something uniquely creative about Morozova's combat approach, improvising techniques that Vrexora had never encountered in her 79 previous victories. "You fight well, human," she acknowledged during a brief lull. "As do you," Morozova replied, breathing heavily but maintaining perfect form, "though I suspect you're holding back." Vrexora's head crest flared, a sign of surprise. The human was correct. Something about this opponent made her hesitate to deliver a killing blow. Was it respect? Curiosity? Or something deeper she couldn't identify? The moment of contemplation cost her. Morozova lunged forward, the staff suddenly separating into dual weapons. The unexpected transformation allowed the human to slip past Vrexora's guard and land a solid strike to her abdomen. Pain flared through Vrexora's body. Real pain, not the superficial wounds she had sustained in previous matches. A primal rage erupted within her, the instinctive response of her species when truly threatened. Her vision shifted to the infrared spectrum as battle hormones flooded her system. Her dorsal spines fully extended, secreting a paralytic toxin that dripped onto the arena floor. The crowd gasped collectively as Vrexora released an ear-splitting roar and charged. What followed was a frenzy of attacks too fast for most spectators to follow. Vrexora abandoned technique for pure aggression, forcing the human into desperate defensive maneuvers. Morozova's weapons blurred as they intercepted blows that would have instantly killed most opponents. Just as Vrexora was about to land a potentially fatal strike, alarm klaxons blared throughout the arena. Combat immediately ceased, an interruption unprecedented in the Colosseum's history. Security breach in Section 7. The announcement overrode the combat commentary. All spectators remain in your designated areas. Security protocols engaged. The force field separating the combat zone from the audience flickered momentarily. In that instant, something small darted through the temporary gap, moving so quickly that even Vrexora's enhanced vision barely registered the motion. The combatants separated, both scanning the arena for the intruder. Consortium rules were clear. Any interruption of sanctioned combat was punishable by immediate execution for all involved parties. "There!" Morozova pointed toward the arena's edge. Vrexora turned, her four eyes focusing on a tiny figure crouched near the perimeter wall. A juvenile human, no more than 5 or 6 Earth years old according to her knowledge of their development cycle. The child wore the distinctive azure jumper of the human diplomatic corps families. "Kira!" Morozova called out, voice filled with alarm. "How did you—" The child looked up, eyes wide with wonder rather than fear. Before either gladiator could react, the small human sprinted directly toward them. Security drones descended from the arena ceiling, paralysis beams charging. In 3 seconds they would fire, eliminating the security breach with lethal efficiency. Without conscious thought, Vrexora moved. Her massive body interposed itself between the drones and the child. Just as the first beam discharged, the energy burst struck her scales, temporarily overloading her nervous system. She collapsed to one knee but remained conscious through sheer force of will. "Stop!" Commander Morozova shouted to the approaching child, but it was too late. The Small human reached Vrexora and did something that would forever change the course of galactic history. With complete innocence and total absence of fear, the child wrapped tiny arms around the fearsome gladiator's leg in a universal gesture of affection. A hug. The arena fell silent. The silence in the arena lasted precisely 3.7 seconds before erupting into chaos. Spectators from a dozen species began shouting, some in outrage at the interruption of their entertainment, others in astonishment at the unprecedented scene unfolding before them. The Crimson Reaper, the most feared gladiator in the 12 systems, stood, frozen, one knee still on the ground, as a small human child embraced her scaled leg. The security drones hovered uncertainly, their targeting systems unable to fire on the Dracosian without risking harm to the human juvenile, an action strictly prohibited by consortium law regarding protected species. "Kira, come here now," Commander Morozova said firmly but gently, extending a hand toward the child. The little girl looked up at Vrexora, completely unintimidated by the towering alien predator. "Your colors are pretty," she said simply. "You look sad, though. Are you hurt?" Vrexora stared down at the tiny creature, all four eyes blinking in asynchronous patterns of confusion. In her 5 cycles as a gladiator, no being had willingly touched her outside of combat. The sensation of small arms wrapped around her leg created an unfamiliar pressure in her thoracic cavity. "I am not injured," she finally responded, her melodic voice softer than any in the arena had ever heard it. "Kira is my daughter," Morozova explained, approaching cautiously. "She was supposed to remain on our diplomatic vessel with her caretakers. I don't know how she got here." The child beamed up at them both. "I followed the nice blue man. He said I could see Mama fight." Overseer Lack appeared at the edge of the arena, his spindly limbs trembling with agitation. "This is an outrage, a violation of sacred combat protocols. The consortium demands—" "The consortium will stand down," a new voice interrupted. A tall, elegant human in formal diplomatic attire stepped through the security barrier, flanked by representatives from 3 different alien species. Ambassador Nayara Okafor, representing Earth and her colonies. "This child is under diplomatic protection." The arena's atmosphere crackled with tension. Consortium security forces materialized at multiple entry points, weapons drawn, but not yet aimed. The combat was legitimate until this interruption. Ambassador Okafor continued, her authoritative voice carrying throughout the now silent arena. No rules were broken by either combatant. The child's actions are not the responsibility of the fighters. Vrexora remained unnaturally still, acutely aware of the small, warm presence still clinging to her leg. Something fundamental was shifting. Inside her, a feeling she couldn't identify but which seemed to be dissolving a hardness she had carried since her capture. "The human delegation requests a temporary suspension of combat," the ambassador announced formally. "We invoke Article 27 of the Intergalactic Sporting Code." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Article 27 was rarely used, a provision allowing for combat postponement under extraordinary circumstances. It required approval from both contestants. All eyes turned to Vrexora. As the undefeated champion, her word carried significant weight with the consortium officials. "Do you consent to suspension of combat, Gladiator Vrexora?" Overseer Lack asked, his voice tight with controlled fury. Vrexora looked down at the child, then at Commander Morozova, whose face showed both concern for her daughter and something else, a quiet apprehension about Vrexora's decision. "I consent," Vrexora stated, her voice carrying through the arena. "Combat may resume tomorrow at the standard hour." Gasps echoed from multiple sections of the audience. The Crimson Reaper had never before agreed to a postponement. Some spectators began demanding refunds, others speculated wildly about the gladiator's motives. As security personnel moved forward to escort the child away, Kira tightened her grip on Vrexora's leg. "Don't be sad," the little girl whispered. "You don't have to fight if you don't want to." Something cracked inside Vrexora's chest, not physical, but a barrier nonetheless. The simple wisdom of the child's words penetrated defenses built over 5 cycles of survival and killing. Come, little one, she said gently, carefully detaching the small arms from her leg. Your mother awaits. As she handed the child to Commander Morozova, their eyes met in silent communication. Something unspoken passed between warriors. Recognition, understanding, perhaps even the first tentative threads of alliance. The diplomatic delegation requests a meeting with both combatants, Ambassador Okafor announced. Neutral territory 1 standard hour from now. Overseer Lack chittered in protest, but the consortium's chief adjudicator, a massive Jovian with translucent skin revealing multiple brains, raised a tentacle for silence. Granted, the adjudicator rumbled. Combat suspended until 3rd rotation tomorrow. All bets held in escrow. As Vrexora was led back to her holding cell, she became aware of whispers following her. The audience, the guards, even her handlers, all looked at her differently now. The fearsome reputation carefully cultivated over 79 victories had been irreparably altered by one small child's fearless embrace. For the first time since her capture, Vrexora wondered if there might be a path to freedom that didn't require more killing. The neutral meeting ground selected by Ambassador Okafor was the consortium's diplomatic annex, a spherical chamber with walls that shifted between transparent and opaque depending on the occupant's species-specific comfort requirements. Currently, they displayed a star field interspersed with gentle blue light, accommodating both human and Dracosian visual preferences. Vrexora sat uncomfortably on a reinforced chair designed for larger species. She had been allowed to remove her battle armor but still wore the symbolic restraints required for all gladiators outside the arena. Thin bands of quantum-locked metal around her wrists that could immobilize her with a single command code. Commander Morozova entered first, now dressed in formal military attire rather than combat gear. The human's movements revealed lingering pain from their encounter, though she concealed it well. My daughter is safe, Morozova said without preamble. She's been returned to our ship under guard. Thank you for your restraint in the arena. Vrexora inclined her head slightly. The child showed courage approaching me. I respect courage. Ambassador Okafor arrived next, accompanied by her multi-species team and, surprisingly, the consortium's chief adjudicator. The massive Jovian pulsed different colors as it settled its gelatinous form at the head of the conference table. This situation is unprecedented, the ambassador began after formal introductions. A diplomatic incident during sanctioned combat could trigger complications across 17 treaty frameworks. The combat was legitimate, the adjudicator stated. The interruption was not the fault of either combatant. Vrexora's secondary eyes narrowed. Why are we here? The suspension is temporary. Combat resumes tomorrow. Ambassador Okafor exchanged glances with Commander Morozova before responding. We have a proposition that might benefit all parties involved. She activated a holographic display in the center of the table. Documents in multiple languages rotated slowly. Legal texts, contract terms, diplomatic seals. The Earth Coalition has been seeking cultural exchange with the Dracosian refugees since first contact 3 years ago, the ambassador explained. Your people's knowledge of ecological restoration could help us rehabilitate damaged colony. Worlds, Vrexora's head crest lifted in surprise. My people are scattered, many are indentured like myself. Precisely, Okafor nodded. Which brings me to our proposal. Earth wishes to purchase your contract from the consortium. The room fell silent. Contract purchases were rare, but not unheard of, typically reserved for exceptional specialists whose skills were more valuable outside the entertainment sector. To what end? Vrexora asked cautiously. Commander Morozova leaned forward. We want you as a cultural liaison and combat instructor for our diplomatic security forces. Your knowledge would be invaluable. The adjudicator's translucent skin rippled. The consortium has invested significantly in Gladiator Vrexora. Her combat revenue stream is substantial. We're prepared to pay 3 times her contract value, Ambassador Okafor countered, plus exclusive rights to broadcast recordings of her previous victories in Earth territories. Vrexora's mind raced. Was this genuine or some elaborate trap? Humans were known for their diplomatic creativity, but they were also new to intergalactic politics. Perhaps they didn't fully understand what they were offering. "And if I refuse?" she asked. "Then combat resumes tomorrow as scheduled," the ambassador replied simply. "This offer is entirely voluntary." Vrexora turned to Commander Morozova. "You would forfeit our match? Surrender your honor as a warrior?" The human's violet eyes held steady. "I would recognize that some things are more important than combat victory. My daughter saw something in you that others have missed. She has always had good judgment about people, regardless of species." "The child," Vrexora said softly. "She approached me without fear. Children often see truth more clearly than adults," Morozova responded. "Kira asked me why you looked so sad when everyone called you a champion." Something shifted in Vrexora's chest again. That strange sensation that had begun in the arena when tiny arms encircled her leg. A feeling almost forgotten from her life before captivity. "The terms," the adjudicator interrupted, practical as always. "Full contract value plus 200% compensation. Release of all future combat obligations. Exclusive cultural liaison status for Earth territories." Ambassador Okafor nodded. "Plus protected status for the gladiator and facilitation of communication with scattered Dracosian refugee communities." Vrexora's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture of deep thought among her kind. "And my people? The other refugees?" "Earth is prepared to negotiate regarding other Dracosian contracts," the ambassador stated carefully. "Your case would establish precedent. Hope," that was the unfamiliar sensation in her chest. After 5 cycles of combat and survival, hope had become an alien concept. Now it flickered tentatively back to life. "The consortium accepts these terms in principle," the adjudicator announced, its multiple brains pulsing with different colors. "Final contract revisions will be completed, within 1 standard rotation." As the meeting concluded, Commander Morozova approached Vrexora privately. "There's someone who wants to see you again if you're willing." The door slid open to reveal little Kira, her face lighting up at the sight of the massive alien gladiator. Without hesitation, she ran forward and wrapped her arms around Vrexora's leg once more. "See?" the child said, looking up with absolute certainty. "I told you that you didn't have to fight anymore." 3 months after the unprecedented events at the Galactic Coliseum, Vrexora stood at the observation deck of the Earth diplomatic vessel Harmony, watching the stars streak by as they traversed the jump point between systems. Her massive frame no longer bore the crimson armor of combat. Instead, she wore the deep blue uniform of the Earth Coalition's Cultural Exchange Division, specially designed to accommodate her unique physiology. The quantum restraints were gone. In their place, she wore a simple communication band, a symbol of her new status and a practical tool for translating the more nuanced aspects of Dracosian language to her human colleagues. "Ambassador Vrexora," a familiar voice called from behind her. "The diplomatic team is assembling for the mission briefing." She turned to find Commander Morozova, now Security Director Morozova, standing in the doorway. Their relationship had evolved from potential combatants to reluctant allies to something approaching friendship over the past months. The human still moved with a warrior's grace, but now carried herself with the confidence of someone who had chosen her path, rather than having it forced upon her. "I still find that title strange," Vrexora admitted, her melodic voice echoing, slightly in the observation chamber. "For 5 cycles I was only gladiator or champion." "You've earned it," Morozova replied. "The negotiations with the Dracosian Refugee Council wouldn't have progressed without your intervention." They walked together through the corridors of the massive ship. Crew members nodded respectfully as they passed, no fear in their eyes when they looked at the former gladiator. News of the Embrace, as it had come to be known, had spread throughout human space and beyond. The image of a fearsome alien warrior being hugged by a small human child had become a powerful symbol of unexpected connection across species barriers. The diplomatic chamber was already filled when they arrived. Representatives from 8 Earth colonies sat alongside delegates from 4 Dracosian refugee settlements. At the head of the table, Ambassador Okafor stood conferring with a holographic projection of the Earth Coalition's council. "Ah, Ambassador Vrexora," Okafor greeted her. "Perfect timing. We were just discussing the terraforming proposal for New Draco." New Draco. The name still created that peculiar pressure in Vrexora's chest. An uninhabited planet in Earth-controlled space, with atmospheric and geological conditions remarkably similar to her lost homeworld. The first joint human Dracosian colony, a sanctuary where her scattered people could begin to rebuild. The environmental engineering teams report promising results from the initial tests, Vrexora informed the assembly. Our adaptive reseeding techniques have successfully established preliminary biomes in the Northern Hemisphere. As the meeting progressed, she found herself frequently translating not just language but cultural concepts between the species. The humans' aggressive optimism balanced against her people's cautious pragmatism. Where humans saw opportunities, Dracosians recognized potential threats. Together they were creating something stronger than either could accomplish alone. A small commotion at the door interrupted the proceedings. A familiar little figure darted into the room, pursued by an exasperated caretaker. "Kira," Morozova sighed. "You know you're supposed to wait until after the meeting." The 7-year-old skidded to a halt, looking momentarily abashed before her natural exuberance reasserted itself. "But I finished my project. I wanted to show Ambassador Vrex." Vrexora's head crest lifted in amusement. In the months since their first meeting, Kira had appointed herself unofficial ambassador's assistant, shadowing the massive alien whenever shipboard duties allowed. The child's fearlessness had never diminished, nor had her uncanny ability to see past Vrexora's intimidating exterior. Ambassador Okafor checked the time. "We're due for a recess anyway. 10 minutes, everyone." As the diplomats dispersed, Kira bounded up to Vrexora, proudly displaying a handheld holoprojector. "Look what I made in cultural studies class." The device activated, projecting a detailed 3-dimensional map of New Draco's proposed capital city. The architecture blended human efficiency with traditional Dracosian design elements, soaring crystalline spires alongside practical communal spaces. At the city's center stood a striking monument. 2 figures, one massive and scaled, one tiny and human, locked in an embrace. "That's us," Kira explained unnecessarily, beaming with pride. "Teacher said we should design something that represents cooperation between species. I called it, the moment everything changed." Vrexora gently touched the holographic image with one massive clawed finger. "It is perfect, little one." Later that evening, after Kira had been persuaded to return to her quarters, Vrexora retreated to her private sanctuary, a chamber modified to recreate the environmental conditions of Draco Prime. As warm, methane-tinged air circulated through the room, she removed a small holographic crystal from its protective case, her treasured image of her homeworld before the collapse. Beside it, she placed a new crystal, a gift from the Morozova family. It contained a single image, Vrexora kneeling in the arena, a small human child hugging her leg fearlessly while the stars shone overhead through the Colosseum's transparent dome. 79 victories in the arena. 1 defeat, not by combat, but by compassion. The former gladiator activated both crystals, watching as the images of past and future hovered before her. One world lost, another being born. One life of violence ended, another of creation beginning. Beyond her viewport, the stars continued their eternal dance as the harmony carried its precious cargo of hope toward a new horizon. In 3 days, they would reach New Draco, where the first permanent settlement was taking shape. Refugees and diplomats working side by side to build something unprecedented. Vrexora extinguished the lights, her 4 eyes adjusting instantly to the darkness. In the arena, she had learned to perceive weakness, to exploit vulnerability. Now she was learning something infinitely more difficult and more rewarding: how to recognize strength in gentleness, power in connection. The Crimson Reaper was gone, In her place stood someone new, shaped by a child's fearless embrace and the profound realization that some battles are won not by fighting, but by having the courage to stop. As the ship hummed around her, carrying her toward a future she had never imagined possible, Ambassador Vrexora of New Draco closed her eyes and, for the first time in many cycles, slept without dreaming of blood and combat. Instead, she dreamed of building, of healing, of a small hand clasped trustingly in her own as they walked together into a shared tomorrow.